So this is Vincent, and Vincent is about to get rich by orchestrating his own false rape accusation. Find out how he does it. He had come all the way from South Africa to the United States on a full-ride scholarship, a feat that many would have killed for. He was a pharmacy student at one of the most prestigious universities in the country, surrounded by the brightest minds and the promise of a stable, successful future. But Vincent felt none of the gratitude he knew he was supposed to. Instead, all he felt was emptiness. Every morning, as he walked through the campus, he passed rows of luxury cars, parked like mere accessories to their owners' extravagant lives. Lamborghinis, Porsches, and Rolls-Royces lined the student parking lot, their glossy exteriors reflecting the privilege of the hands that drove them. Boys his age strutted across campus, draped in designer clothing, their wrists adorned with watches that cost more than his entire year's tuition. They threw massive parties in penthouses, where champagne flowed like water and celebrities danced under neon lights. Their girlfriends were supermodel beautiful, their confidence effortless. And Vincent, despite his looks, despite his intelligence, he was invisible to them. He had no wealth, no car, no designer shoes, just a heart full of longing and a mind plagued by dangerous dreams. One evening, as he sat on his bed, scrolling through social media, his stomach twisted with frustration. His screen flashed with a video of some rich kid on a yacht, spraying champagne over a group of giggling women in bikinis. He clenched his jaw, his fingers tightening around the phone. Why am I even here studying? What's all this effort for if I can't taste real life? He muttered under his breath, bitterness creeping into his voice. His roommate Joel glanced up from his laptop, his dark brows furrowing. Still on that rich life obsession? Vincent didn't respond. He couldn't. Words would never be enough to explain the chasm inside him, the endless pit of yearning and resentment that only deepened with each passing day. Later that night, he lay in bed, flipping through television channels absent-mindedly. His eyes were half-lidded with fatigue until something caught his attention. A news story flashing across the screen. A serious-looking reporter stood in front of a courthouse, her voice solemn as she relayed the details. A man, wrongfully imprisoned for murder, had just been awarded $1 million in damages. Vincent sat up straight. The camera cut to the former inmate, a gaunt man with tired eyes, standing in front of microphones. He looked shaken, but Vincent's focus wasn't on his pain. His focus was on the number plastered across the bottom of the screen, $1 million. His heart pounded. He didn't even suffer that much. And they gave him all that, Vincent whispered, his mind racing. He wasn't thinking about the man's years of lost freedom, the nights spent in a prison cell, the injustice of it all. No, none of that mattered to Vincent. What mattered was the money. $1 million for a few years behind bars. Could it really be that simple? Could suffering, at least the appearance of suffering, become a currency he could cash in? Murder was too complicated, too many risks, too much planning. But something else clicked in his brain, something insidious, something dark. What about rape? And this is where Mary comes in. Mary was the type of girl most people didn't notice. Thin, glasses always slipping off her nose, books hugged to her chest like they were shields. She sat alone in the library and didn't talk much in class. She was smart, very smart, but invisible. Vincent noticed her. At first, it was curiosity. Then it became a plan. She lived alone in a quiet apartment just off campus. Barely any social media presence, no boyfriend, no close friends. Perfect. So, Vincent approached her, gently. "Hey, I saw you in pharmacology class last week. You gave a killer answer on that enzyme breakdown thing. Mind helping me study for the next test? Mary blinked behind her glasses, her lips parting slightly in surprise. Sure. Yeah. That was all he needed. In the weeks that followed, Vincent made her laugh, brought her coffee, remembered her favorite authors. He complimented her eyes, her handwriting, even the way she chewed her pen. He texted her every morning and called her at night, and Mary fell hard. One evening, he kissed her under the pale light of her doorway. She melted. That night, as they sat on her couch watching a documentary, Vincent finally told her, "I want to tell you something, but you have to promise you won't freak out." "What is it?" she asked, snuggling close to him. "I need money, Mary. Real money. I'm tired of this life, tired of being ignored, broke, and treated like I don't exist. I've figured out a way to make millions." She sat up. "What do you mean?" He paused. Then he said the words slowly. "I want to fake a rape case against me." Mary blinked. "What?" He explained it all. The news story, the compensation, how he'd seen people win huge settlements. He told her how she was the only person he could trust. "I'll make it look real. You'll go to the police. Say I raped you. They'll arrest me. I'll fight it in court. We'll act everything. Then when they discover it's false, I'll sue them. We could get millions." Mary's voice trembled. "Vincent, that's crazy. What if they find out?" "They won't. I'll make it look real. I'll even hit you. Not hard, just enough to leave a mark. We'll sleep together too. It'll look authentic. Trust me." Tears welled in her eyes. "You want to sleep with me? To fake a rape?" He leaned in. "Mary, I love you. I wouldn't ask if I didn't trust you. Do this with me. When it's all over, we'll be rich. We'll travel. You and me." She hesitated, but her heart had already said yes. That weekend, Vincent arrived at Mary's apartment with bruising makeup and an old hoodie, his face grim with purpose. Mary had dressed in a torn t-shirt and sweats, her hands trembling as she stood by the door. Her eyes were swollen, not from pain, but from the weight of what she was about to do. She had never done anything like this before, never even imagined it. But she had no choice. She loved him, and love meant sacrifice. "Are you ready?" Vincent asked, his voice steady. Mary swallowed the lump in her throat and nodded. His hand came down on her cheek. Not too hard, just enough to sting, enough to leave a mark. Her head snapped to the side and tears welled up, but she forced herself not to cry. Another slap landed on her arm. She gasped, her body stiff with fear and something else, disbelief. Then they had sex, hard, rough, as planned. It was her first time. She had dreamed of something different, something soft and gentle, but that didn't matter now. The pain was sharp, hot, making her whimper. She felt the tear, felt herself bleed. It was over too fast, yet the moment stretched endlessly in her mind. Afterward, she curled up on her bed, sobbing into a pillow, her body shaking. Vincent sat in silence, staring at the wall. Guilt tried to creep in, but he shoved it away. That night, barefoot and trembling, Mary ran into the police station, her face streaked with tears and bruises. "He raped me," she cried. Vincent was picked up at dawn. The sharp knock on his door jolted him awake. Before he could even process what was happening, officers stormed in. Strong hands yanked him out of bed. He barely had time to throw on a shirt before cold metal snapped around his wrists. "What? What's going on? I didn't do anything," he shouted, his voice laced with the perfect amount of confusion and fear. He struggled just enough to make it believable. his heart hammering against his ribs. They didn't care. He was shoved into the back of a police car, taken downtown, booked like a criminal. Flashing cameras captured his disheveled hair, his wide, stunned eyes. Mugshot, fingerprints, hours of questioning. Mary's story was airtight. Her voice trembled as she recounted the horror of that night. The medical report backed her up. Bruises in all the right places, her virginity torn, evidence of force. Her parents wouldn't let his go. They were Christians who believed in waiting till marriage to have sex, so virginity was a big deal for them. They wanted justice by all means. They hired the best lawyer to handle the case. The university wasted no time. He was suspended, effectively erased. Social media erupted. Pharmacy student rapes classmate in her own apartment. University under fire for producing monsters. His face was everywhere. Strangers spat his name like poison. But Vincent never cracked. "I didn't rape her," he repeated to every officer, every journalist. "I swear I didn't." Weeks passed. The case dragged. And then Vincent was convicted of first-degree rape and sent to jail for 10 years. And then, finally, a mistake. One day, a new detective, Sarah Henson, took over the case. She was sharp. Unlike the others before her, she didn't just accept the evidence at face value. She analyzed it, tore it apart, looked for cracks. And soon, she found one. Mary's timeline was off. She had sworn, in a trembling voice, that Vincent left immediately after the assault, slamming the door behind him. But the security camera outside her apartment told a different story. It showed Vincent arriving that evening, calm and normal. It also showed him leaving, calmly, hours later. No rush, no panic. Then came the text messages. While Vincent had deleted most of their conversations, he had missed one, a flirty message he had sent Mary that morning. "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe." If this was a planned rape, why would a rapist text his supposed victim sweetly just hours before? Detective Henson pushed harder. She visited Mary's apartment and noticed something strange about the slap marks. Too precise, too clean, like makeup. Vincent then texted Mary to speak up now, unless they, the detective, may find out what happened. She was pushing too hard, and he was scared. Mary agreed. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she choked out the truth. "I lied," she whispered. "He didn't rape me." The room went still. "I wanted him, but he didn't want me. He kept ignoring me, so I seduced him and made him come over after many trials. Then, when he was at home, I spiked his drink, just to heighten his desire. I needed to make sure he slept with me." Her voice wavered. "And when it happened, I knew what I had to do. I knew if I cried and screamed, everyone would believe me." Mary's parents were devastated. Their only daughter had destroyed a man's life, out of rejection. The case flipped overnight. Vincent was declared innocent. His name cleared in a dramatic turn of events. The same media that once vilified him now broadcast his exoneration.
Mary faced immediate consequences. She was expelled from the university, her academic future erased in an instant. But it didn't end there. She was formally charged with filing a false police report and attempting to obstruct justice. Her tearful apologies meant nothing in the eyes of the law. Then came the financial blow. Her parents, wealthy, devout Christians who had raised her to value honesty, were forced to pay $500,000 in damages to Vincent. Their prestigious reputation shattered, they withdrew from public life in shame. But Vincent wasn't done. He sued the university for wrongful suspension and emotional distress. Fearing another scandal, the institution settled, paying him a staggering $15 million. Vincent walked away, not just free, but wealthy beyond his dreams. A week later, Vincent called Mary. They met secretly at a park. "I just wanted to say thank you," he whispered. "I'd do it all again for you, she said with a sad smile. He reached into his bag. "Here's something for you, a check." She pushed it back. "Keep it. I don't want money. I just want you." "I'll always be here," he said, kissing her forehead. But he lied. Vincent was now the school's biggest celebrity. The once invisible scholarship student had transformed overnight. He rolled onto campus in a sleek new Lamborghini, the engine purring like a beast. His old dorm. Forgotten. He now lived in a penthouse with a skyline view, surrounded by luxury. Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Rolex, he wore them effortlessly, like he had been born into wealth. Girls who once ignored him now clung to his every word. They lined up for a chance to be seen with him. Invitations poured in, exclusive parties, weekend getaways on private jets, yacht cruises under the sun. He had finally stepped into the life he had always envied. Mary watched from the shadows, her heart aching. He had erased her. No calls. No texts. Nothing. She had transferred schools, drowning in humiliation, her parents' disappointment weighing on her. But she still hoped. Hoped he'd forgive her. Hoped he'd return. He never did. Mary was drowning in regret. After transferring to a new university, she had hoped for a fresh start, but it was impossible to escape the weight of what she had done. Her name had spread like wildfire, whispered in hushed voices in lecture halls and dorm rooms. People sneered at her, called her a liar, a fraud. No one trusted her. Professors looked at her with thinly veiled disapproval. Some students outright avoided her, as if false accusations were contagious. She had lost everything, her friends, her reputation, her parents' trust. Yet, despite it all, she still longed for Vincent. She watched from a distance as he lived the life she had once dreamed of. He had money, luxury, admiration. He had everything she had tried to give him, everything she had risked everything for. But he refused to acknowledge her. No calls. No messages. Nothing. She told herself she deserved it, but anger still festered. Didn't he owe her something? A second chance? Some form of acknowledgement? She had done it for love. And yet, he had discarded her like she was nothing. 2 years passed. Vincent had it all. Until one evening, while partying in Dubai, he was arrested. Interpol. The US government had reopened his case after Mary's anonymous video confession went viral. In the video, she detailed everything. The planning, the sex, the lies, the slap. It was raw, emotional, and viral. Millions shared it. Public pressure rose. Vincent was extradited back to the US. He was charged with conspiracy to defraud the government, manipulating a criminal investigation, and perjury. The courtroom was packed. Vincent stood in his tailored suit, confident. But the evidence was overwhelming. The text messages. The confession tapes. The photos of him planning. Mary testified in person. Tears streamed down her face. "I loved him. And he used me." The judge looked at Vincent. "You turned the justice system into a playground. You've wasted public resources, ruined reputations, and destroyed a young woman's life, for money." He was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. As he was led away in cuffs, the cameras flashed. The same cameras that once made him famous, now captured his fall. Mary rebuilt her life quietly. She graduated, moved to Europe, and started therapy. She never dated again for years. Vincent sat in prison, a shell of his former self. The cars, the money, the fame, gone. He'd gotten his millions. But at what cost? In the end, the boy who wanted a luxurious life faked his own downfall, and found himself in a very real one. Sometimes, lies can pay. But they always collect interest. Subscribe for more jaw-dropping stories every week. Drop a comment to share your thoughts. Was Vincent a genius or just cruel? Like and share if this kept you glued to your screens. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you're the first to know when the next story drops. Your support means the world and helps me bring you more thrilling content.